That's the sound of these country balls slipping through your fingers, because all of these are about to be gone forever. I just realized how horrific it is that I can put half of Panama's face on Greenland, and then their body can just be like down here, just dead like that. Time is running out very fast. You know the drill. Check out that link down below to makeship.com before they're gone forever. You'll notice these are all potential places that the US would love to make their 51st state. But here are some other countries that I'm sure Putin would love to make their, they don't have 51 states. I don't even know what, they have oblasts. Russian oblasts. What do they have, like 30 or something? Oh, 46, plus a lot of other things. Well, anyways, Russia would love to, I don't know, make another oblast out of these countries. Putin recently had a Moscow victory parade, and these are all the countries that showed up. If you want perfect insight on who exactly is opposing forces to the US, NATO, the Western aligned world, well, this will tell you everything you want to know. Obviously, the big one there to celebrate with Putin was Z from China. They actually vowed during this parade to have stronger ties into the future, which, well, yeah, that's something. It's actually kind of interesting because, of course, this parade was to celebrate V-Day or Russia winning in World War II. But remember, so did China. I think it goes over a lot of people's heads out here in the West, but don't forget, Russia and China were on the same side in World War II. Russia, or the Soviet Union at that time, was mostly fighting Germany, but remember at the end of the war, they were also fighting the Japanese just alongside with the Chinese. Also, don't forget, this is obviously pre-communist China, pre-PRC, so it actually makes a lot of sense for them to show up to the Moscow Victory Parade. Mongolia also made an appearance, as well as all of the Central Asian nations. Again, we just mentioned the Soviet Union. These are all countries formerly a part of the USSR. Of course, they're going to want to celebrate their own contribution to the victory in World War II. Belarus is, of course, Russia's biggest glazer out there, so they got to show up. However, the only country out of the Caucasus Mountain region, even though these three were also all a part of the USSR, it was only Armenia that made an appearance. Azerbaijan and especially Georgia have way more of a complicated relationship with the current Russia. Ukraine, of course, did not show up, and basically none of the countries in NATO except for Slovakia. I wonder why Slovakia made an appearance. Like, if you're currently in NATO, but back in those days you were a part of the USSR, I'm looking at the Baltic states, they still didn't show up. I think it'd be kind of awkward if the Finns made an appearance, just because there was a lot of fighting. Finland versus the Soviets and Finland versus the Germans. The Slovakian Prime Minister said, even though he is the only EU member or NATO member for that matter, to in fact show up, he said he went because he wanted to honor basically the Red Army who liberated Slovakia during WW2. Of course Serbia was going to show up. Of course Serbia. I kind of want to retract my statement that I said in the very beginning. I guess this is not necessarily showing you 100% who is like a non-Western allied nation, because not only Slovakia making an appearance, but North Korea actually didn't make an appearance, and I have no idea why. Why in the hell was Kim Jong-un not there? We got countries from all parts of Africa that showed up. Zimbabwe, Equatorial Guinea, Burkina Faso is that? Ethiopia, Egypt, Myanmar, and Vietnam out of Southeast Asia. Then Cuba, Venezuela, and Brazil. Now, these are some interesting ones, especially because of how close they are to the American sphere of influence. Obviously, Cuba and Russian relations, that's been a thing for a while now. Venezuela has, over the last, like, kind of recent decades, got closer to Russia because of the embargo. Brazil is a BRICS member, but not all the BRICS members did end up showing up. For instance, look at India, or South Africa for that matter. I mean, again, this is a celebrate, see, South Africa wouldn't show up because they were part of the British Empire, but again, this is to celebrate the Soviet Union's contribution to the win over World War II. Papua New Guinea and New Zealand, not even in the event to attend this map. It's one thing to not get invited to the Moscow V-Day parade celebrations. It's another thing to not get invited to a freaking map. The only country I'm surprised by is Egypt. Are they close to Russia? Yeah, especially because, you know, the Egyptians were also under the British Empire, you would think. Because, you know, like, if you were part of the British or the USA, you're going to kind of have your own celebrations for, you know, winning World War II. Brazil has absolutely no beef with Russia, plus it's a very important player in BRICS, so no surprise here. Some places did attend, but it was only with a diplomat, not the head of state. It's an important thing to remember. In completely not shocking news at all, favorable views of the USA have declined globally. What a surprise. And we're literally only comparing from 2024 to 2025. Within 12 months? The only place that actually went up on this chart is Turkey, but you know what? I mean, we were already basically at the floor. Only 18% of Turks had a favorable view of the US, now it's 25. That's still pretty low. But you know what? Israel also went up as well. We were formerly at 77%, now we're at 83%. Why is is Kenya mad at us? A drop from 78 to 62? I'm clearly missing something. South Korea real mad. A drop from 77 at 2024 to now 61 in 2025. I think I did read something about that. Poland is one of our biggest stands. They're now at almost only 55%. Wow, Poland, you really made y'all mad. Oh, weirdly, Nigeria, we went up. Japan, we went down. See, this was a worry when I was starting to do my own travels this year. Like, how much was the world gonna kind of be like, oh, it's an American. Luckily, I just traveled to Asia and everyone just thought I was a German, so that was cool. Bro, Mexico, oh my goodness. It was at 61% in 2024. Now it's at 29. I mean, is anyone honestly surprised by this though? Canada had a huge drop. I mean, they kind of liked us. A majority of them liked us before. Now we're just at a third of people that like us in Canada. Germany with a huge drop. Spain and Netherlands, obviously pretty much all the EU countries as a whole. This data comes from the Pew Research Center too, so this is real. Again, this is not very surprising data. If you ask again, probably next year, you know what? I don't think next year we're going to really change that much, but I bet you these numbers can drastically change depending on the month, even depending on how the questions are worded and things like that. Here are some of the more trusted leaders. Emmanuel Macron coming up on top. I mean, just barely, with 46% of people being confident he would do the right thing in regards to world affairs. These three, not so much. Anyways, in other news, water is wet. What propaganda campaign is US running in Nigeria? Only half kidding. It just sticks out. Israel going from 77% to 83% greatest ally. Looks like Israel, Turkey, Nigeria, and India all have more favorable views though. Great success. Who's your most famous dead person? I feel like it says a lot when... Wait, what is going on with Elizabeth's face here? I feel like it says a lot when you have a dead person that is more recent. I mean, that compared to Greece. Bro, Greece, Aristotle? How is it Aristotle? Greece, you gotta pump out more famous people. I don't know what else to say. I mean, at least Napoleon Bonaparte is from the last, like, 200 years. Same with Pablo Picasso. I mean, first of all, if they're actually able to have a picture on this map, you know, nice job. You're continuing to pump out impactful, influential people like Albert Einstein, even though it's in black and white, that works. Mozart, you know, it's like a painting. Oh boy, they put Tesla into Serbia. Start Yugoslavian Wars 2.0. Croatia fight them right now. Leonardo da Vinci out of Italy. Oscar Wilde out of Ireland. Vincent van Gogh. I think a lot of these people are just famous because, you know, that you're forced to learn them in school. I actually did not realize Leon Trotsky was technically Ukrainian. Vlad the Impaler. I think I dude, I did not learn about Vlad the Impaler. I'm gonna say that right now. I don't think American schools want to teach about this guy, but I talk about him all the time in my videos. Who wouldn't want to search this guy up? Just look at that name. Does anyone want to know how he got that name? Of course, Otto Turk out of Turkey. Ambiance, Norway. I don't know who that is. I don't mean to be mean. I should probably know who that is. Alfred Nobel out of Sweden. Vladimir Lenin. Are you saying Lenin is more famous than Stalin? I mean, maybe if you're from, I don't know, if you're more of like a Marxist, if you're studying more communist ideas, I guess you're going to kind of focus more on Lenin. How is Lenin more popular than Stalin? I don't believe that. There's probably an interesting like breakdown of the countries that have an inventor or scientist versus a writer or philosopher versus an artist or composer versus a politician or leader. I think it says a lot about the country itself if your most famous person is a politician versus an artist or things like that. I wonder who's the most famous dead person out of the USA. It's got to be like George Washington, probably George Washington or maybe Abe Lincoln. There's so much to choose from. Is China's got to have Mao? I mean, you could technically break down the states into individual states. All right, Alaska, this is just sad. Bro, what? How is it a dog? I mean, at least Hawaii's got their queen here. Steve Jobs out of my home state of California. Oregon has an actor, River Phoenix. Washington got Jimi Hendrix. Gerald Ford is from Nebraska. Some of these places are going to have, oh, Minnesota with Prince. Yeah, a lot of these places have, wait, Michael Jackson came from Indiana. Yeah, a lot of these states have politicians as well. Johnny Cash out of Arkansas. That's crazy. Oklahoma literally has a football player. Bro, really? This is actually fascinating. Okay, Virginia does have George Washington. Vermont, do better, Vermont. I'm sure they're trying, they just can't. It's hard to be more famous than that guy. We're not being honest with ourselves about Austria, are we? Honestly though, that completely went over my head. I can't believe it. Yeah, why did I let that go over my head? There's a much more famous person for a much more unique facial hairstyle that I think we could have put there. Nothing happened! Austria might in fact have the most famous dead person, like in world history. This is a ridiculously subjective guide. Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on what part of the world you're coming from too. We are immortal here in Finland. Yeah, for the countries that didn't have somebody, you don't have anyone that died. I feel like it should be that Finnish sniper from World War II. There's a lot of people missing. Belgium, Switzerland, no Baltic states, no Belarus. I would argue Shakespeare is more famous than Elizabeth. The methodology is probably most searched or most referenced in the past few years. Yeah, they probably use like Google Trends or something like that. Is Da Vinci really more famous than Julius Caesar? Imagine not having a salad named after you. Oh boy, here is the change of the amount of Jewish people before and after World War II. It shouldn't be surprising that most of these countries are in red. The shockers are definitely the green ones. We've got 130% more now in Sweden than back in 39 to 45. There's actually 6% more in Denmark too. Kind of surprised to see France had such an explosion because France is the outlier here. France was obviously occupied by Germany during World War II, yet they still have now more Jewish population. Switzerland was neutral, Sweden was neutral, Spain was neutral. To be fair, Denmark was also occupied, but they don't have as much growth, only 6%. The fact that France up over 100%, that's crazy. Now, the south of France was kind of chaotic. Maybe that's why. Spain though at over 650%, that's crazy. How is there such an explosion there? Now the red countries were still fascinating to look at because of the massive drop out of so many of them. 99% out of Romania, 99% out of Poland, and 98% out of Czechia and Slovakia. They have Russia and Ukraine and Belarus labeled in red, but we don't have percentages, unfortunately. Even Turkey has now less Jews. Now, some of it, like at least when it comes to Turkey, because Turkey wasn't really in World War II, they did end up joining the Allies at the very, very end, but they didn't really do a whole lot. I think for a lot of the Jews in Turkey, they probably just migrated down to Israel. It's not too far away. That might be the case for a lot of these places. Italy didn't have as much of a drop. Italy, it's not as cut and dry, even though Italy was on the axis. UK with only a 10% drop. Again, I think a lot of Jews did go to Israel or even the USA, actually. They were probably done with this continent after WW2. They had already had to deal with so much. Or I really need to figure out what's going on here in Spain. There are many Israel and Spain that I'm not knowing about. Maybe that's the reason. The Spanish are up 650% because before the war there was like 3, and now they have an Israeli embassy. Oh, it was actually illegal to practice Judaism in Spain until like 1968. Oh, did they have like some Reconquista holdover laws still? Spain was pretty anti-Jewish though, also anti-Muslim, obviously. Yeah, they basically just went from very, very, very few Jews to now just very, very few Jews. Just 2 varies. I'm trying to understand why the UK would be less now. From what I can find out, both immigration to Israel and some to the US. Just FYI, this change in Russia happened around the end of the 1980s and beginning of the 1990s, not because of World War II. Well, I'm sure they lost a lot in World War II too, though. I think about this so much while traveling. Who has the worst passport? And in turn, who has the best as well? So what is considered the most powerful passport are basically passports that allow you to enter into other countries visa-free. Now, as an American, I think I can only enter, like, I don't actually even know, barely 100? This says the US is in the 9th position with having the best passport, allowing entry to 186 countries without requiring a private. Okay, that's more than I thought. But interestingly, the US is not on this list. We've got Norway, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Belgium, Austria. So first of all, these are all EU members. However, certain EU members have more: Spain, Italy, Ireland, Germany. Okay, what is the one country that gave these countries visa-free access versus the over the Austrians, Belgians, Luxembourgish, Finland, Denmark, South Korea? Okay, here's where the real difference is. South Korea, Japan, but Singapore is the big one. Now, if I'm a country, am I going to want a person from Singapore who likely has a lot of money, and there's not that many people from Singapore, to enter my country visa-free? Hell yeah. They got money, they're gonna spend it here, come on in. It makes sense that Singapore would have such a strong passport. Remember, this is not just visa free, it's also visa on arrival, which is basically the same thing. If you show up to a place, you just fill some documents out and then boom, they let you on in. And when comparing Singapore to all of just Southeast Asia, they're destroying it. Malaysia is all the way down in 14th place. Then the 3rd place, remember, Brunei in 23rd overall in the world. I'm so jealous of my friends that have dual citizenship though, because even if you have like a much significantly less powerful passport, like let's say you have like a middle of the road, like a country that only gets you like 78 countries, well, it's likely that there's gonna be like a lot of non-overlap. For instance, if you have like an ultra rare combination of like a USA and Chinese passport at the same time, or USA and Russian passport, you're gonna be able to go pretty much anywhere visa free. So yeah, what's more important than having just one singular strong passport is just having 2, honestly, in my opinion. But if you're trying to find the race for the worst passport in the world, well, we're starting off with Iran, then Sri Lanka, Sudan, North Korea. That's crazy that North Korea, you would think North Korea would be a lot like higher up on this list. I mean, they're tied with Bangladesh at 39. They're also tied with Eritrea. Then we have the Palestinian territories. This is rough. Only 38 38 countries. Nepal, you can only arrive to 32 different countries visa-free. Pakistan, 32. Somalia, Yemen, Iraq at 30, Syria, and then the worst in the world, unsurprisingly, Afghanistan. It just gets worse and worse for these countries. Now, again, if you have an American passport combined with an Afghanistan passport, that might be an interesting combination, though, even if it is the worst. I mean, just look at these countries that Afghanistan can enter into. That's pretty interesting. There's got to be some where it's harder to go as an American, right? Some. Imagine being lower than North Korea. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. As a Venezuelan, I'm really surprised we're not on the list. Apparently, Haiti, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic are even worse. What country is it that saw a German passport and said, come on in, but saw an Austrian passport and said, get a visa? It's apparently Oman. That's really random. I think having two passports is always a cool thing, but to be honest, in my case, I only benefit from my Swiss one. I have a Portuguese passport. Well, you need kind of like a drastic difference in the passports. Forget visa-free travel. The real power of a passport is how much of an effort your local embassy will try to get you out of a pickle. Big difference. That's a good point. These are the patrons for this month. If you'd like to join, check that link down below to patreon.com. If Greenland is the largest island, then Australia is its own continent again, right? Drew Supremacy League. Drew's Argentinian Trust Fund. Rip Grandpa. Connor Pavlik. Carmel S. DOOCHBAGGINS. Alexander the Terrible. Fredrik Tibblin. KingBearHaze. LuxembourgLover. Migloo the Goat. Nolan. NordTyrol. And Tambre